Hello there everyone, and welcome to a new edition of Lydia's Crafty Corner with me, Lydia, in my little crafty corner. So today we'll be doing a little bit of faux watercolouring. So I'm going to be using the Painted Rose stamp set. So it does already have a painted feel about it, but I wanted to give it a really cool watercolour look. So I'm going to show you how I've done that in this video. So as I said, I'm using the Painted Rose stamp set from Volcano, and I'm going to be using this layered image here. I didn't end up using the layered image for the leaves, but I did for the flower. I'm using a piece of watercolour cardstock, and I'm just going to tape that down to my board so it doesn't move around or warp or anything like that when I'm doing my watercolour. For the first layer, I'm using Lavender Field, and Pink Diamond. And I'm going to ink my first layer up with the pink diamond, so the pink colour, and I'm going to stamp that off once, so I'm getting the second generation ink on my cardstock. This is going to help it not to grab onto that cardstock as much, so I'm going to be able to move that ink around a little. Where it's got the darker, I didn't take as much off as I wanted to, but it's alright, we're going to be good, it's going to happen really good. So as you can see, because I'm working on a piece of plastic, I always forget the word, I'm sorry, it's a hard piece of plastic. I'm just going to add my inks onto that, and I'm then going to cover the whole of that layer that we've just stamped, that pink layer, with water. So that was just clean, clear water that I've popped down. And all I'm doing now is I'm just taking the inks, in no rhyme or reason for the way I'm doing it, I'm just popping some colour back in. And I really want a mix of colours, so I'm not mixing them together so much. I'm just kind of dropping them into that water and letting them find their own way. Because we've popped that clean clear water down, the inks will move around, so it's going to give you a really cool effect. Then you're going to want to make sure that that's nice and dry before you work on the next layer. I'm using Deep Iris and Pinkalicious for this one. Again, I'm going to ink up the layer with the pink ink, and then I'm going to add in the purple later. So I'm using the second generation on this second layer of the flower, and that was the Pinkalicious. And as you can see, there's little dark spots on there. But again, I'm not going to worry too much about that. We can just add darker watercolour in to that bit. So you're going to want to make sure that your first layer was really dry, because if it's not, you're still going to get a bit of movement around on that layer. So you can either wait for it to dry over like for a couple of hours, or you can heat set it and then add it back onto your board. So I'm just going to cover the whole layer, the one that we've just stamped. I'm not going onto that first layer. I'm just going to cover the ink that we've just put down, and then I'm going to add in the water with the ink, so the watercolor. So I'm just adding it in. I've got a little bit of Pinkalicious, and I'm adding some Deep Iris in to make it a darker shade. As you can see, when it dries, it does dry a lot lighter than it is when you put it down. So if you want a darker color, you're going to want to put down lots of ink. For this layer, I'm using the Rubellite and the Midnight Violet. Again, I'm using the second generation ink on this layer, using the pink ink because it's lighter than the purple ink, but I did want to be able to see it. So we're getting darker through the shades, but we're really mixing it up with the colours. So I'm adding the Rubellite and then the Midnight Violet onto my board, and I'm mixing these ones around a little. I did like the look of these added together. So all I'm doing is I'm just going to paint this in. I'm adding water here and there. I'm adding it where we've just stamped that layer. So we are kind of tracing it when we're doing all of these layers. We're just tracing the layer of where we popped down the ink and then adding in a bit more in. There's nothing more difficult about it than that. We're just tracing, a lot of tracing. And it's really fun and therapeutic, and it looks like you've painted it yourself. And it looks like it's real, which is really cool. So again, I'm going to do the leaves. I'm only using one layer. I'm using Parrot and Volcano Lake on this one. And I'm just going to mix it up. I'm not going to do the layers on this one. I want all of the detail to be in that flower. So the leaves are kind of just not a filler, but they're just going to frame the bit that we want people to see. They're going to draw the eye into that flower. I wanted the leaves to be a little bit darker, so I've added a little bit of olive onto my board. When I stamped the leaf, I did use the second generation of the Parrot So I've stamped this off once onto a piece of scrap cardstock or paper or anything that you have, and then stamp this down into place. You're always going to want to use the second generation when stamping onto some watercolor cardstock, and then add in the watercolor on, so it helps the ink move around. It doesn't grab onto the cardstock as much as it would if you use the first generation of ink. Okay, once I finished all my watercoloring, I decided I wanted to add a little bit of fun, so I've added some splatters. All I'm doing is adding a little bit more water into those colours and then just adding a little bit on. For my sentiment, I'm going to be using the Painted Rose stamp set, so I'm using one of these sentiments from there, and then I'm going to add a die cut sentiment as well. So I'm just stamping this onto a piece of black cardstock. I've already cut it into a strip. I've used the embossing ink from Altenew, and I'm just using some pure white embossing powder, and then I'm going to heat set that. So I've used the Amaze Me from the Painted Rose stamp set, and I'm going to add a little bit more onto that. So I'm using the U from the Just For You die set, and I'm just going to cut this out of some glitter foam. So this is some silver glitter foam that I found in my drawer, and I thought I would make use of it. So that's what I have done. I've just cut that with my mini blossom, and it is cut perfect. I just love how this cuts really, really well, and it's be able to stay on my desk, and I don't need to move it, and it looks pretty. So I'm going to add on some glossy accents onto the back. So you're going to want a strong adhesive to glue this on because it's foam going onto something else. So you're going to want something nice and strong, and that's where I found this wet glue goes really, really well. I'm then going to add my painted panel onto my card base. So I've just added a little bit of tape onto the back. You could use Altenew glue tape if you wanted to, but my panel was a little bit too warped for that, so I had to put down some stronger tape to make it lie nice and flat onto my cardstock. I'm now going to just add some foam tape onto the back of that strip. The word, the U, is nice and dry and in place, and I'm just going to pop that down just over that rose, just so it draws the eye in a little bit more. And there we go. That is all complete. So all we've done is we have done a lot of tracing with lots of watercolor and inks. So I really do hope that you like the card and that you've enjoyed watching the video. And if you do want to not miss out on any of the videos that we do upload to the channel, it would be great if you do subscribe. So again, thank you so much for watching, everyone, and I do hope that you have a great day, and I'll see you again really, really soon. Goodbye.